Jake lived in a small, quiet town, surrounded by endless fields and farmlands. Every morning, he would wake up early and get ready for his job as the milkman. His job was simple: deliver fresh milk to the families in the town. However, Jake wasn't just any milkman. He liked to think of himself as something much more important. He would tell anyone who would listen about his business skills and how he was working his way to becoming the richest and most successful man in the town. "People don't realize it, but I'm helping them," Jake would say, puffing out his chest. "Without me, they wouldn't have fresh milk every day. I'm the backbone of this town, you know?" Most people just smiled and nodded. They knew Jake liked to boast, but they didn't mind. He was a friendly guy, always ready with a smile and a story. But deep down, everyone knew that Jake wasn't exactly the successful businessman he claimed to be. One of the people who heard Jake's constant boasting was Gwen. She worked on a farm with her husband, Noah, at the edge of town. Gwen was known for her kindness and her hard-working nature. She always had a smile on her face, even when she was up before dawn, feeding the animals and tending to the crops. Gwen wasn't easily impressed by Jake's stories, but she couldn't help but notice that he often seemed to visit their farm more than necessary. "Maybe I'll stop by the farm and help Noah with some of the chores," Jake would say as he handed over the milk to Gwen. But Gwen knew better. Jake wasn't coming to help Noah. He was coming because he had started to take an interest in her. She wasn't fooled by his compliments. Still, she was polite and friendly, as always. She saw something in Jake that reminded her of a young man trying to impress others, but not quite knowing how to do it in the right way. Jake's visits to the farm became more frequent. At first, Gwen thought he was just being friendly. But then, she noticed something more. Whenever Jake came by, he would make sure to compliment her, offering remarks on her looks or her work ethic. "You know, Gwen, you're really something special. You're so strong and hardworking, just like me. You could do anything you set your mind to." Gwen, though flattered by the attention, was not interested in Jake's advances. She was happily married to Noah, who was clever and kind. Noah had a reputation for being honest and hardworking, just like Gwen. Together, they made the farm successful, and Gwen knew she didn't need to hear Jake's boasts to feel proud of what they had accomplished. One morning, Jake stopped by while Gwen was feeding the chickens. He leaned against the fence, watching her. "You know, Gwen," he said with a sly smile, "I've been thinking. A woman like you could have any man she wanted. You don't have to settle for working on a farm. You could be with someone who knows how to make real money, someone who could take you places." Gwen wiped her hands on her apron and looked at Jake. "I don't need someone to take me anywhere, Jake," she said softly. "I'm perfectly happy here with my family." Jake didn't seem to take the hint. He grinned even wider. "Well, maybe I could take you places you've never been. I know the best restaurants in town, the most expensive places. I could show you what real success looks like." Gwen smiled politely, but her mind was already elsewhere. She had heard enough. It was clear that Jake wasn't really interested in her as a person. He just wanted to impress her, to prove that he was someone important. She decided it was time to talk to Noah about Jake's growing interest. Noah was always calm and clever, and Gwen trusted him to come up with a solution. That evening, after dinner, Gwen and Noah sat down together to discuss Jake. Noah could tell that Gwen wasn't too thrilled by the attention Jake had been giving her. Gwen was honest and straightforward, and she had no problem telling Noah exactly what had been happening. "He keeps coming by, and every time he talks to me, it's all about how rich he is and how successful he's going to be," Gwen explained, her voice calm but firm. "He's not a bad person, but I don't want him thinking that I'm interested in him." Noah, who had always been a practical man, thought for a moment. He wasn't jealous or insecure about Jake's attention toward Gwen. He trusted Gwen completely, but he could see that Jake's behavior might cause trouble, and he wanted to put an end to it in a way that would teach Jake a lesson. "I've got an idea," Noah said with a grin. "Why don't we have a little fun with him?" Gwen raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Noah continued, "Let's give him exactly what he wants. Let him think he's getting somewhere with you. But then we'll turn the tables on him and show him that being humble and working hard is what really matters." Gwen smiled. "I like the sound of that." Together, they came up with a plan. The next time Jake came by, they would give him a taste of farm life, a little lesson in hard work, something he clearly didn't appreciate. Gwen would invite Jake over when Noah wasn't home, making him think that he was about to spend some quality time with her. And when he arrived, they would surprise him with a task that would make him think twice about boasting. The following morning, Gwen waited for Jake to arrive, her heart racing a little. She had already spoken with Noah about the plan, and they both agreed it would be harmless fun, as long as Jake learned a lesson. As Jake approached the farm, he was looking particularly pleased with himself. He was wearing his best clothes, his hair neatly combed, and a confident smile on his face. When he saw Gwen standing by the gate, he waved enthusiastically. "Good morning, Gwen. I was just thinking about you. You know, There are so many things I could teach you about business and success. I bet I could show you how to make a lot of money." Gwen smiled politely. "That's nice of you to say, Jake. Actually, I was wondering if you might help me out. Noah's going out of town tomorrow, and I'll be alone on the farm. If you have time, maybe you could come by tomorrow evening and give me a hand." Jake's eyes lit up. He had no idea what Gwen meant by help, but he was eager to spend more time with her. "Of course. I'd love to come by tomorrow. I'll be there in the evening, and we can talk business, maybe even share a drink." Gwen nodded. "Great. I'll see you then." As Jake walked away, Gwen couldn't help but shake her head. She had no intention of talking about business with Jake. Instead, she had something else planned, something that would show Jake the real value of hard work. The next day came quickly, and Gwen couldn't help but smile to herself as she prepared for Jake's visit. She had a long list of tasks she needed to complete on the farm, and with Noah away, it would be the perfect opportunity to teach Jake the lesson she and Noah had planned. By late afternoon, Gwen had finished up most of the farm work. The sun was beginning to set, casting a warm, golden glow over the fields. She stood at the gate once again, waiting for Jake. The moment she spotted him in the distance, walking toward the farm, her heart skipped a beat. Jake had put on his best clothes again, as if he was ready to attend a ball rather than help out on a farm. He smiled broadly when he saw Gwen. "Good evening, Gwen. I'm here, just like I promised. I've been looking forward to this all day." Gwen greeted him warmly, hiding the amusement in her eyes. "Hello, Jake. I'm so glad you could make it. Come on in. I was thinking we could have some tea and talk." Jake followed her into the house, his chest puffed out with pride. Gwen led him to the kitchen, where she had prepared tea and fresh cookies. She had set a comfortable scene, making sure everything looked pleasant. Jake's eyes lit up when he saw the table set so nicely. "You really know how to make a person feel welcome, Gwen," Jake said, taking a seat. He looked around at the cozy home, trying to impress her with his wealth of words. "You know, I could really show you the finer things in life. You don't have to live like this forever." Gwen smiled politely as she poured tea for them both. "I'm happy with my life, Jake," she said softly, keeping her tone light. "I've got everything I need." As she spoke, she noticed Jake was growing increasingly confident, his posture becoming more self-assured. He was starting to believe that he was getting somewhere with her. The conversation turned to business, as Jake had expected. He began to tell Gwen all about the strategies he was using to make his fortune, though none of it made much sense. Gwen listened attentively, But in the back of her mind, she was already thinking about the next part of the plan. Suddenly, there was a loud knock at the door. Gwen's heart raced. This was the moment she had been waiting for. She stood up quickly, a look of mild panic crossing her face. "Oh no, my husband's back early. If he sees you here, he'll be furious. You need to hide, Jake." Jake's face went pale, and his confidence seemed to fade in an instant. "What do I do?" he asked, his voice suddenly anxious. He looked around, unsure of what to do. Gwen smiled sweetly, her eyes twinkling with mischief. "Don't worry, Jake. I have an idea. You can't let him see you here. I don't want to upset him. He'll understand if you just hide in the barn. You can pretend to be one of our farm helpers. It's only for a few minutes." Jake, though nervous, didn't want to seem weak. He nodded quickly. "I understand. I'll hide in the barn. Just tell him I'm a worker or something." Gwen handed him a straw hat and a pair of old overalls she had found in the back of the closet. "Quick, go now before he comes in." Jake didn't hesitate. He grabbed the overalls and hurried out of the house, his heart pounding in his chest. He couldn't believe this was happening. All he had wanted was to spend time with Gwen. Yet now he was being asked to hide in the barn. It seemed odd, but he wasn't going to back down. He thought it would all be part of some game, maybe a test to see how far he could impress her. Jake trudged quickly toward the barn, his nerves frayed. The overalls didn't quite fit him right, and he felt silly wearing the straw hat. But his pride wouldn't let him turn back now. He had to play along. He opened the barn door and stepped inside, looking around at the hay and the animals that seemed to be watching him curiously. He didn't know what to do first, so he awkwardly approached one of the cows and began petting its side. The cow stared back at him, unimpressed. Jake stood there for a few moments, unsure what to do next. He looked over at the tools in the corner of the barn, pitchforks, shovels, and brooms. He groaned inwardly. This wasn't what he had imagined. He had pictured impressing Gwen with his business acumen, not working in a barn like a common laborer. As he pondered, the barn door creaked open, and Noah entered. He looked around the barn, his eyes landing on Jake. His face remained calm, but a grin tugged at the corner of his lips. "Well, well," Noah said, crossing his arms. "Who do we have here?" Jake's heart skipped a beat. He had hoped Noah wouldn't recognize him, but it was clear now that Noah knew exactly who he was. Jake tried to salvage the situation. I'm just here to help out," Jake stammered, his voice awkward. "Gwen said I could lend a hand." Noah raised an eyebrow, clearly amused. "A hand, huh? Well, we've got plenty of work to do. You must be a strong, hard-working fellow to come all the way out here to help us." Jake smiled nervously. Of course. I'm always willing to lend a hand. Noah, pretending to believe Jake, handed him a pitchfork. Here you go. Why don't you start by cleaning up the hay? I'm sure you're used to hard work. Jake took the pitchfork reluctantly. It felt heavy in his hands, and he had no idea how to properly clean a barn. He awkwardly jabbed at the hay, shoveling it into piles, all the while wishing he was anywhere else. Noah, watching from the door, hid a smile behind his hand. He could see that Jake was completely out of his element, struggling with something as simple as cleaning a barn. It was clear that Jake had never done a day of real work in his life. Hours passed, and Jake's arms were sore from all the shoveling. He had moved from the hay to mucking out the stables, each task becoming harder than the last. He hadn't realized how tiring real farm work could be, and he couldn't help but wish he had never gotten himself into this mess. Finally, when the barn was somewhat clean, Jake sat down on a bale of hay, exhausted. His clothes were dirty, and he was covered in sweat. He looked ridiculous, but his pride kept him from saying anything. He just wanted to get out of the barn and forget this ever happened. Noah walked in, a smirk on his face. Well, you've done a decent job, Jake. We're grateful for your help. He handed Jake a small bag of fresh vegetables from the farm's garden. Here's something for your trouble. Jake took the bag, his face flushed with embarrassment. Thanks, he muttered, his voice quiet. Noah's eyes twinkled with humor. You know, Jake, there's more to being successful than talking about business. Hard work and humility go a long way. You might want to think about that next time you start boasting. Jake didn't reply. He was too embarrassed. He couldn't believe how wrong he had been, thinking that he could impress Gwen with his stories. He had learned the hard way that there was no substitute for true effort and honesty.